Hello friends. We know that after the huge amount of the data, we need to optimize the query for the better performance. Also, there are no rules for the how to optimize the query and improve the performance. But in this video, I explain some tips for the improve the performance and optimize the query. I am sure these tips are more useful to you, so please watch the full video. Also, if you didn't subscribe to the channel, please subscribe to it to get the more technical videos. So let's start to get the tips. The first and most important tip is the never use the star in the select query. Let's take one example. We have a one bucket which is fully filled with the different types of fruits. Now someone wants an apple. Right now, what do you think to better? Take the whole basket from there and give an apple to him, or just take a single apple and give him? I think the single apple would be a great solution. The same thing is happening with the SQL. You want some columns from the table, but you add the star in the select query. So when you add the star, it will take a time to get all the columns. For example, we have one table of emails in which we have the columns such as subject, from email, to email, body and date and time. Now we just want the subject and email by the date filters. But use the star. So here the body column has a huge amount of data and it takes more time to get, which is the unnecessary. In short, we need to add the particular column names which is required and never use the star. The second tip is to use the no log keyword. Suppose you are on the way and someone coming from the other side. Now you are waiting until he will cross to you for recognizing him. That means you are locked for a few seconds or minutes to recognize him. But if you ignore that person and go ahead, then you save your time. The same thing is in the SQL. When someone tries to add the insert and update the records, the table will be locked until the operation is completed. So when you try to retrieve the data, it waits for a few seconds until the table unblocks. By use of the no log keyword, you can get the data in every time and it doesn't depend on your table is locked or not. So if you don't want the real time data, you can use the with no log syntax. The third tip is to use the proper joins. Please use the proper joins where need the inner joins. Don't use the left or right joins. Also apply the proper sequence of the joins and columns according to the indexing. The sequence of the joins impact the query. So always do the joins the table with the proper sequence. In this example, you can see that in the first screenshot, first use the left join and then use the inner joins. It will give the proper output, but it will impact on your query performance. Here on a left join, we use all the left tables data and retrieve the match data from the right table. So after that we use the inner join, which means when you use the inner join, it will ignore some rows and data will be filtered. So if we use the inner joins first and then use the left join, it reduces the query time. In short, we need to use the proper sequence by the data filtering. So it will reduce the joins in the row and reduce the query time. The joins column sequence also impact your query. Your joins on parameter sequence should be like primary key, indexing of the table columns, and then other. In this example, customer address ID is a primary key and the index has been created on the customer address table with the customer ID and address ID columns. So first you need to try to join with the primary key if it is possible. If it's not possible, you can go with the customer ID or address ID for the join, or at the end you can use some other columns. So when you use the primary key, it will be impact your performance. When you are using the customer ID, it will be also impact on your performance. So if you are using is shipping equal to 1 first, it will be decrease your performance. So always try to use the primary key and then after indexing key, columns, and then after other columns. Tip number 4 is to try to avoid the distinct. Sometimes we add some joins and duplicate the data occurs. So that time we use the distinct keyword to ignore the duplication. But always try to find the why data is duplicated and try to solve the issue. That means always try to avoid the distinct keyword for the better performance. Tip number 5 is to use the proper indexing. When you try to optimize the query, we add the missing indexing. But always check first this index, the query performance is increasing or not. Also, we need to check the tables and all the indexing and try to use them if that is useful. Sometimes we create a many indexing which are unused and it decrease the performance. Therefore, please remove the unused indexing. That means please create the proper index and use the properly. Tip number 6 is avoid to the multiple or conditions. Try to find some alternative ways if available. Also sometimes we are using the multiple or conditions on the same column filters. Let's see with this example. The first screenshot we use the multiple or for the state filter, but we can use the in keyword for that. This change also improves your some performance. So use some alternative ways such as in, not in, or etc. rather than the use of the multiple or keywords. The next tip is to avoid too many joins in a single query. If possible, please split your query into the parts. For that, you can use the CTE or temp table to avoid the too many joins in a single query. By reducing the joins, you can get some improvement on your query. Tip number 8 is the minimum use of the subqueries. Please try to minimize the use of the subqueries because when you use the subquery, it tries to get the data for the particular table and it takes some more time to compile and retrieve it. I am not saying that never use the subquery, but if we can achieve it by the joins, please use that. Try to avoid the subqueries in where conditions. Tip number 9 is use the union all rather than use of the union. The difference between the union and union all is that union all gets all the data from the both result sets, but union eliminates the duplicate rows. So union takes some more time than the union all to retrieve the data. So always try to use the union all, whether use the union. Tip number 10 is use the pagination on the SQL side, not on the code side. Try to use the pagination on the SQL side and get the proper amount of data that is required. If we require only 100 rows, then never retrieve all the data and filter on the code side, because when it takes more data, it takes some more time to retrieve the more data. So better practice is that use the pagination on the SQL side. The last tip is that use the set no count on. By that, SQL never tries to count the how many rows are affected and display that. By this, you can get the quite a performance improvement. In this screenshot, you can see that the syntax of the set no count on. Thank you for watching this video. Please try to use these tips and please add the comments if you get some improvement on your queries. Please like and share this video and subscribe to the channel. Also, if you have any queries, you can directly contact on our email ID.